Hello and welcome. You're watching News 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, let's begin with markets. To my left is Amit Ranjan and Suyash Maheshwari. Suyash, markets opening at an all-time high this morning.
Great morning for the Indian markets, Shweta. Indian markets were able to climb all walls of worry and the muted trend in global equities, and both Sensex and Nifty opened in today's session at record high levels. Now at 10 a.m. this morning, Sensex is trading above the 67,700 mark. Now Sensex has touched record highs for the first time since July 20, whereas we have seen Nifty hitting record highs on a daily basis. Yesterday also we saw some buying action where Nifty was able to scale another peak. Now today Nifty is surpassed 20,150 levels. Now in today's session we are seeing that all sectors have participated.
Okay.
PSU banks, realty, Pharma index, they have been the top performing sectors. Also, the mid cap and the small cap indices are participating. There was a lot of worry about the mid cap and the small cap space because of a big correction that we saw day before yesterday, where both indices fell about 3 to 4%. Both indices in today's morning trade are up about 1%, so actually outperforming the headliners.
All right, and a big momentum there as far as Sensex Nifty is concerned. Sensex also at an all-time high since 2020. Joining us on the bulletin is Ambareesh Baliga, who's an independent markets commentator. Mr. Baliga, thanks very much for taking time out. What's leading to this rally and buying momentum?
See, 20,000 on the Nifty was a milestone which was awaited for long. I mean, we have seen close to those levels twice or thrice, and then the markets are corrected. So naturally, once it's crossed, you'll see a lot of those fence sitters jumping in. And because of which, I think clearly this momentum should continue for a while. And I'll not be surprised if we see markets closer to about 21,000 levels decently soon. But then, if you're talking of valuations and the comfort, anyway, I was not comfortable with the markets at 19,500 levels, so I won't be comfortable at these levels too. But then I think it's a good market for traders. I mean, especially for the bulls, because whatever you buy now, most of the stocks, especially in the mid cap and the small caps, keep moving up. But this may not be the right time for an investment because what we saw day before yesterday, as far as the mid cap and small caps are concerned, I mean, the way we saw that cut, I think that's very much possible. So one needs to be a bit careful as far as that is concerned. So even traders, I would say, should keep a very clear stop loss in mind, because if you don't keep a stop loss, you could get caught on the wrong foot.
Ambareesh, talking about traders needing to be cautious, what are some of the levels that they would need to track when it comes to Nifty?
See, I think as far as Nifty is concerned, clearly this 20,000 is a very important level. If that is broken, sentiment gets broken to a certain extent. But then I think 19,500, 19,600 levels is a very, very good support. If that is broken, then I think you'll see a very sharp correction. So I think these two levels have to be kept in mind by traders. And as of now, it seems that we could see another 800 to 900 point move from here, possibly over the next couple of weeks.
Now, Ambareesh, also talking about investors, specifically new investors, what would be your advice for new investors who are seeing Nifty and Sensex hitting record highs, Nifty especially hitting record highs on a daily basis? What would be your advice at current juncture? Should they enter the markets at now or wait for some profit taking to take place?
I would say one should wait for some profit taking before you start entering the markets, because again, if you have that FOMO, the feeling of missing out, so in that case, I would say possibly invest a bit at this point of time, because for the portfolios and the clients I advise, in fact, we are close to about 40% in cash, because we had a very good run up from the March-April levels where we are fully invested. So from those levels, in fact, we have booked a lot of profits, sitting on cash between 30 to 40%. So someone coming in new at this point of time, I would say that if you can manage to hold back, then possibly just sit on cash for a while longer. If you can't, then possibly invest 20-25% of your cash at this point of time. But be prepared to see losses and should not really panic, because in case the market comes down, then you have the balance 75% to invest.
All right, and FIIs continue to be net seller as of yesterday as well, Mr. Baliga. Do you see the trend reversing anytime soon?
No, I don't see that trend reversing because if you look at the hawkish sort of thing from Fed, I mean clearly we expect one more rate hike. So I really don't see any reason as to why the FIs would be investing more at this point of time. In fact, they would look at booking out to a certain extent because if you remember about 6 months back, they were net investors. And surely they are sitting on decent amount of profits. So I think it makes sense for them to book out to a certain extent and take the profits back home. Whereas we are clearly seeing that the markets are being supported by the domestic mutual funds because of the sort of record SIP flows, and the mutual funds can't really sit on too much of cash. And at the same time, I mean, we have seen the retail and the HNI investors. I mean, they have made good amount of money in the last couple of months. So I think the confidence level is high. So people are putting in more cash at this point of time. But then one should always remember that always a liquidity-driven rally. I mean, it creates a bubble at some point of time.
All right, and before we go to global cues, I want to also specifically talk about US inflation maybe in just a while from now. But small cap, mid cap, once again rallying, Suyash.
Yeah, that's very strange actually, because in day before yesterday's session, a lot of analysts after the 3 to 4% fall in both indices were expecting and saying that the valuation at current point in time is stretched and maybe it's time to shift the focus from the broader markets to the large cap. But then again, after day before yesterday's fall, we have seen buying momentum again pick up in the Nifty mid cap and the small cap space, whereas both indices are now outperforming the large caps.
Right, both indices outperforming large caps. What's your view on small cap, mid cap, Ambareesh? Should one continue to be invested at this point? Do you think the valuations are stretched?
Because we have seen quite a few of them becoming actually multi-baggers in the last couple of months. And I think it's best that one at least takes the capital out. If you're not selling the whole thing, at least take your capital out, be safe. Just play with your profits. I think that's the sort of advice which I'm giving to most of my clients. I'll just give you an example. A company like IRFC, Indian Railway Finance Corporation. I mean, like the IPO had come at 26 rupees. The stock was languishing at 1920 levels for a long time. I mean, at those levels, I had given a buy. And my target price was about 36. And the best possible, I mean, even if I stretch the valuation, it would have come to 42. And today, the same stock is quoting at 80. We have seen the stock going up to 93. I mean, this is madness because I mean, like their business model has not changed. Nothing has changed in the last 6 months, but the stock has gone up nearly 3x, 3 to 3.5x. So, what justifies this? I mean, other than the sentiment booster or whatever you call that, maybe you can call that euphoria. But then it's quite difficult to justify this fundamentally. So clearly, when your expectation was 42, max expectation was 42 as quoting at 80 plus, I think it's very prudent to book out to a large extent.
So as you are keeping it with mid caps and small caps only, as you said, a lot of the stocks and sectors, especially if you look at defense, railway, PSUs have turned multi-baggers this year. Are there any pockets of value in the mid caps and space, in the mid cap and the small cap space that you're looking at this point in time?
So, see, I mean, there is some value I see still in pharma. I mean, that has been a bit of an underperformer in the last 2 years. We have seen decent movement in the last 6 months, but still I see value as far as pharma is concerned. Specialty chemicals has also just about started moving, and that's one space where there's still a decent amount of value.
So what about the hospital sector? We saw that a lot of these hospital companies are investing in raising their capacity. Apollo Hospitals yesterday, day before yesterday, we saw a news that they are going to get another 3,000 beds in their monitoring program, whereas they currently have about 1,000 beds. So what is your take on the hospital segment, sir?
No, on the hospital segments, I'm quite positive, no doubt. But then, I mean, we are having a lot of, I mean, these hospital groups coming out with their IPOs, which clearly means that all of them will be adding a lot of capacity. And sooner or later, I think we will see a decent amount of capacity built up, which actually means that margins could be under pressure to a certain extent. I mean, see, if you look at the corporate hospital, it's actually meant for a certain set of the population. It is not meant for the, overall population. It is meant for only the richer class. So there, I suppose, I mean, if you look at the demand supply, I think that could get satiated at some point of time. I mean, if I'm not wrong, maybe in the next 3 years, you'll actually see the capacity shooting up quite a lot, which actually would mean slightly lower margins. So I will not really go out and buy hospitals at this point of time, but then the stocks which I have, possibly I'll hold on.
All right, and since we continue to talk about sectors and stocks specifically, I know you're very excited and pumped up about Bombay Dying, Suyash.
Actually, I think Bombay Dying is a stock of the day. The stock was up about 7% yesterday, and it was up about 20% in the morning trade.
What's the big trigger?
Yeah, talking about the trigger. Now, Bombay Dying yesterday entered a deal to sell about 20. It's a land pocket of about 22 acres to Sumitomo Group for about 5,200 crore, which will be among one of the biggest land deals in Mumbai. Now, on completion, according to Nusli Wadia, the company will make a pre-tax profit of about 4,300 crores, and the company will use this money to to reduce their debt burden. Also, there was a large block deal today, Shweta, earlier this morning, where 35 lakh shares, which constitutes about 1.7% of the entire equity capital, changed hands at a deal of about 56.8 crore rupees. So, sir, what's your outlook on Bombay Dying? Maybe too hot to enter at this point?
See, if you look at the Bombay Dying market cap, it's about 3,300 crores, and here we're talking of a 4,300 crore net inflow. But again, the big question is, what will the shareholders get out of that? I mean, if there's going to be a buyback or if there's going to be a large dividend payout to the shareholders, yes, it makes a lot of sense. But then looking at the track record, I doubt, because quite a lot of will be used to pay off the debt. At the same time, we should remember that another group company, GoAir, is in deep trouble. So possibly some amount of funds will actually go in to sort out that mess. So I doubt whether the shareholders of Bombay Dying really will benefit a lot out of it. But then because of this news, there's a sentimental booster because of which we've seen the stock performing. I mean, I would possibly look at booking out to a certain extent if we see the stock going up to levels of closer to 200.
So what's your long-term outlook on the stock? As you said, short-term, we can expect, you would advise to book some profits, but what about the long-term prospects of the company?
See, the valuable asset was this property, and once this is sold, I really don't see, I mean, a major sort of a booster for the company as such. I think it'll be a normal operation. So I'll not really, hold on to the stock beyond a certain level.
All right, and some other stocks that are in focus this morning, RIL, Adani Group.
Yes, Shweta. So RIL, the retail arm of Reliance Industries, Reliance Retail, is now in talks to raise another $1.5 billion from the wealth fund of Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi Arabia. Now, remember back earlier in September, it raised about about $100 billion at a valuation of about $100 billion. It raised funds from QIA, and then we saw a $250 million influx from KKR. So the plan is, at least from what I'm reading, is to raise about $3.5 billion in the month of September at a valuation of about $100 billion.
And a lot of news, in fact, flowing in, by the way, of what's happening with Reliance's retail business. A lot of value addition and the change in valuation for that matter, Ambareesh. It appears that Reliance Retail seems to be upping its game day after day.
Absolutely. I mean, the way the valuations have been moving up for Reliance Retail and the way they have been raising funds, I think there'll be actual, unlocking for the shareholders once we see a clear demerger, like what had happened for Jio Financial. I think that's what is keenly awaited. And along with that, possibly you'll have the Jio Telecom also getting demerged. I think these are the two things which will actually create a lot of value for the shareholders. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why you should just hold on to Reliance from a longer term perspective.
All right, and Adani Enterprises is also in focus today.
Yes, both Adani Enterprises and Ambuja Cements are in focus because the Adani Group is looking to refinance, the debt taken to fund the purchase of Ambuja Cements from some of the largest banks in Asia, which will be the biggest syndicate loan deal in Asia. Now, Adani Group is in talks to refinance about $3.5 billion of loan which it took for the purchase of Ambuja Cement. So both the stocks were in focus today. I think they are up marginally in today's trade, largely underperforming the entire market, Shweta.
All right, and Ambareesh, I know that I have to let you go very, very shortly. But Adani Group's and then the Adani Group bouquet of stocks that we continue to track, there's been a concerted attempt made by Adani Group to repay as much of its loan as possible, especially on the back of Hindenburg. There's been an attempt made there by the government to by the group to let go of its debt, to clear its books,
Right.
and that continues to be the case as of today.
Absolutely, I think that effort is on, and frankly, I really don't see anything negative coming out of all the probes which are on as of now by the regulators. So, if you're looking at the various group stocks, I mean, I would be positive on two of them. In fact, like Adani Ports is one where I'm quite positive on, looking at the sort of capacity which they have. Close to about 26% of India's capacity is held by Adani Ports. And looking at the way the revenues should shoot up for, the segment overall, the port segment overall, if you're talking the next 4 to 5 years, I would clearly be bullish on Adani Ports. The other one is Adani Wilmar, where I believe that this is an odd man out as far as the sector is concerned, and looking at the overall business of Adani Group. So it's very much possible that this company may be on the block, and you never know whether it's Wilmar who will buy it off, or any of the other larger groups in India. So I think that's when you'll see some value unlocking for this stock to happen. And we have seen a decent correction in the past couple of weeks. So at the current levels, I would surely recommend a stock like Adani Wilmar.
Okay, Adani Wilmar and Adani Ports continue to be focus areas for Ambareesh Baliga there. But Ambareesh, before I let you go, a very important story that broke over the night, and that is in terms of the inflation numbers that have come in from the US. That could be a major market mover, especially for the US. Inflation inching for the second consecutive month. What does it mean as far as rate hike cycle is concerned? Will there be a pause? Will the hike cycle continue unabated? What are you picking up? What are your views on inflation inching up in the US?
No, like I said earlier, possibly we should see a rate hike. The next time we have the Fed meet. So I think that would be negative for the global markets, and especially the Indian markets, and because of which we'll see the FII selling still continuing further.
Okay, it's surprising you say that, because about 99% of the researchers, analysts that we're reading about are expecting Fed to pause that rate hike cycle this time around.
No, because looking at the sort of a statement which they had made, the hawkish statement, and looking at the way the inflation is still inching up, I believe that this is very much possible.
All right, Ambareesh, I know you're down with the fever. Please do take care of yourself, and we will hopefully get you back very soon. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. But staying on with that story, the rate hike, whether it'll happen, whether it won't happen, all of that, of course, is very speculative at the moment, Amit. But what we do know for sure is that the inflation is inching up. And inflation inching up on the back of higher energy prices, which is a pain point for a lot of people in the US.
Yeah, so it has the consumer price index has risen 3.7% in August, up from 3.2% that it had risen year on year in July. Core inflation, core prices rose 4.3%. Which was little less than 4.7% in July, but it is far from what the Federal Reserve's target of 2% is. Mm-hmm. Consumer prices rose 0.6%, which is the highest in last 12 months. Mm-hmm. So all of these, and I agree with Ambareesh, all of these point to another rate hike from the Fed, because their target is 2%, and that is more than double the figures. So you can expect another rate hike, and it will not be good for India, because money will be sucked back in over there.
All right, and another rate hike, absolutely, another rate hike, if that happens, will not be good for India, will not be good for the US markets as well. What's concerning to me, Suyash, is that it's not just the core inflation, it's not just the headline inflation, it's also core inflation. So your food prices, energy prices are going up, as well as core inflation that likely is and will continue to remain higher in months to come.
Definitely, Shweta, because core inflation is something that Federal Reserve takes cues from, because core inflation is something that is not as volatile as the food and energy prices, Shweta. So Fed keeps a track of the core inflation to take cues about what the interest rates would be going forward. Now, whether they'll hike interest rates in the next meet or not, Ambareesh is of a very interesting opinion that Fed may look to hike interest rates. By how much, we don't know, but 97% of the analysts are expecting a pause in the September 20 outcome of the FOMC. Although they are very divided when it comes to the November meet. Now, 48% of the analysts expect the rates to be maintained in the November meet. So we are seeing a little bit of concern over there.
Okay.
What will be the the long-term trajectory of the crude prices, which have risen to a 10-month high? What will be the situation with the food prices because of the monsoon and supply chain concerns? So a lot of things that we would need to keep an eye on, and I think a lot of it will be answered when the FOMC meets next week and the results come out. Also, we'll be taking the minutes which will come out a week or two later after the results.
All right. So in September, it will be clear what the rate hike trajectory will be for the US and resultant impact not just on US markets but also on India markets. But you mentioned crude, and let's bring that up as well. Crude is at 10-month high. It's touching over it's hovering between $92 to $93 a barrel at the moment, and this is concerning. This is concerning because it's not just rising inflation. It's not just offsetting that. It's also concerning on many counts. India continues to be a net exporter or importer rather of crude, which means it's going to jumble up a lot of our economics here in India. There is still time for that, 4 to 5 months in advance. And in next 4 to 5 months, perhaps that's going to play up on the Indian economy as well. But crude prices there continue to be a cause of concern.
Yes, so they're inching towards the 100 mark, but not there as yet. It's the Brent benchmark has risen 47% points to 92, a little over 92. The WTI rallied 55% to 89 levels. But all in all, it is a 2% increase. OPEC has marked down their global supply, global demand for this year by 1 lakh barrels to around 292 lakh barrels for this year. For next year, they've kept it at 30 lakh barrels. Which is also down. So yeah, it is inching towards, and what everybody is worried about is the $100 mark, which it
will be a big dampener.
It will be a big dampener for the markets.
We had Amit Gupta yesterday, who was of the opinion that sooner or later we can see Brent crude going past the $100 mark. It will be a very big monitorable for the market and the participants to keep a track of, because as we know, for the Indian markets, India being a net importer, it has a big implications. Also, crude prices have a lot of implications when it comes to inflation, interest rate, also the currency. Rupee, as we know, is near its record low levels. And this is despite the fact that Indian markets have been, on an up and outperforming, but rupee has been under pressure, and this is largely because of the crude prices, which have scaled to multi-year highs, about $92 a barrel currently. May go up to $100 a barrel.
We don't know it just as yet. But it's very surprising if you look at it, the dichotomy of it. Although the demand is lower, the prices continue to inch up. I mean, how do you really explain it?
So the biggest problem why this was happening was because OPEC had been cutting its supply. Now what we are seeing that the push is coming from the demand side. China's economy is again picking up. If we look at the reserves that the US has, they are at near their all-time lows. So demand is once again picking up. And if you see all the macroeconomic indicators, Shweta, we have seen green shoots of recovery across the board in global, the jobless data claims, the PMI numbers, everything is picking up. So the demand is coming back up, which could maintain pressure on crude price, at least in the very near term.
All right, there could be pressure on crude prices, and as a result of which, I mean, I think people who are watching out there want to know what's going to be the impact on their pockets. I think for Indian consumers, and going back to what we were discussing initially, the impact perhaps will come in the next 4 to 5 months, because let's not forget that there is an advanced booking that Indian oil companies, OEMs or OMCs rather, I beg your pardon, continue to have for next 4 to 5 months, post which perhaps the higher prices will start reflecting, if at all, in the prices of oil, petrol, diesel in India. But even if that happens, the larger consensus is that the government will absorb some of it, because we are in an election year.
And they have been doing that. If you see, the prices of petrol and diesel have been rather stable over the last 6 months. So the pockets of India's middle class, the pockets of Indians at large has not been feeling that pinch just yet, but maybe going forward at some point in time, government may look to transfer that the prices going up to the middle class, and it will reflect in the prices of the fuel.
All right, it will reflect in the price of fuel, and we'll see what the impact will be. So Yash, thanks very much for taking time out. Thank you for joining with your inputs on that story.
Thank you, Shweta.
But we're going to shift focus to another interesting, important story that we are tracking by the way of Ujjwala scheme. And we now know for a fact that there will be more added beneficiaries, and the scheme will perhaps be expanded to get in at least 75 lakh new LPG connections for people at subsidized rates. Krishna Kumar walking into the studio. Krishna, it's good news, absolute good news for people perhaps who are looking to get LPG cylinders at subsidized rates. Remember, this comes on the back of the fact that the government had already lowered prices of LPG in the last couple of months. Right. And that is very important, because it's going to not just help poorest of poor people who do not perhaps have LPG cylinders, availability of it, and also going to help them in a way that it makes it easier for them to get cleaner fuel. You're not mic'd up yet, but I hope my team can play up graphics and perhaps explain what that means for people at large. But it's all in all very, very good news there. Remember, 75 lakh LPG connections to be released. The number of beneficiaries will reach about 10.35 crores with that 75 lakh additional beneficiaries. The PMUY scheme, remember, empowers women economically, socially. You get to first refill, and stoves are free of cost for all beneficiaries. These beneficiaries essentially are people, Krishna, who will get cylinders at a lower price.
Right, absolutely. And in fact, Shweta, you're rightly pointing out, when that drop in prices of LPG was announced, the drop in prices was 200 rupees per cylinder, and that was for those who were not beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana or PMUY scheme, whereas the beneficiaries of the scheme net got a discount of 400 rupees per cylinder, because it was 200 for the beneficiaries and 200 for non-beneficiaries. So that was a huge price drop that took place for the beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana scheme. And even as the price drop took place, the government did announce that while we're making it cheaper for the existing beneficiaries, the idea is to keep adding more and more beneficiaries to the scheme in the first place, because you need to have a huge critical mass of people who are getting this benefit from the government of a subsidized cylinder, a double subsidized cylinder, because bear in mind, the government has subsidized it for those who are not part of the scheme as well. So for this double subsidy, you're talking about the poorest of the poor in the country who will be beneficiaries of this particular scheme. And it's fantastic news that 75 lakh people, nearly 1 crore people, are going to be added to this scheme, apart from the tens of lakhs that are already existing as part of this scheme. And as you read out the details of the scheme, it's not just about giving cylinders out at a discounted price. It's about giving the entire paraphernalia required for people from the lowest of economic stratas in this country to be able to cook a meal or 3 meals for themselves. So coming at a time when food inflation is so high, when Thalinomics clearly points out to the fact that the average Indian thali, because of the rise in food and grain prices and pulses prices, the average cost of the thali itself is up around over 20%. Coming at a time like this is certainly a boon for those who are poor in this country.
All right, absolute boon for especially women who largely are relegated the duty of cooking at home and often tend to not use stove because it's expensive. Remember, LPG connection is expensive. Hence the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana to perhaps help women secure a safe, clean fuel to cook at home, not harm their lungs, not harm the environment in process of procuring either wood or coal to cook. And 75 lakh new LPG beneficiaries means that there'll be more people now who will be able to avail an LPG and at a reduced cost.
Right, and I really hope that that number is doubled and tripled as we go forward, because these numbers, look at the population of this country, 1.4 billion people, and the middle class is what, 25% of this country, and then you remove the top 2%. You've got an overwhelming bunch of people in this country who need good, clean energy that's not harmful for their lungs. As you said, women do most of the cooking in that sort of society, so it's definitely directly beneficial to women and their health. Over and above everything, it's directly beneficial to the entire family per se. You're talking about children as well. Boy children and girl children who are both going to get affected by the fumes coming from wood-fired stoves or coal-fired stoves. So this is a great shot in the arm for the healthy development of families per se who are on the poverty line or below it.
Okay, absolutely. And I think that's good news. Of course, remember, the number of beneficiaries under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana scheme likely to be extended to by at least 75 lakh more connections. Good news there coming in by the way of a government scheme. Let's move on now. Let's move on to a story that we've been tracking since that mega launch of iPhone 15 last night, actually day before, come to think of it. And since you've brought us all the figures here, Krishna, you've given us all the lowdowns of new iPhone 15, the range of it. Let's talk about the price point. Price point is interesting, important to point out. A lot of people were hoping.
Always, when it comes to iPhones.
How much money are you going to shell out? That's important. How much, what kind of, hole is it going to burn in my pocket? Bigger or smaller? Concern being that this was supposed to be a made in India phone, therefore perhaps less expensive. That hasn't happened.
So I'm going to see how this cookie crumbles, this price of iPhone cookie crumbles. Before anything else, there are memes that are going on in social media, Shweta, that already says, if for the previous iPhone you need to sell a kidney, for this one maybe you need to sell both kidneys and still it won't be enough. That's the kind of joke, or and please take this, it's not literal, this is a joke that's going on as a meme on social media. Why are they saying that, Shweta? Because all the talk of iPhone 15, as you're rightly pointing out, this is going to be a made in India iPhone. Why do we want to make more and more iPhones in India? We all thought the more iPhones get made in India, we Indians will be getting it at a lesser price as compared to the rest of the world, is what we thought. But here, not happening for solid reasons, for very valid reasons. Let me just quickly pull out the comparisons as far as the prices are concerned for iPhone 15 between, say, US, UK, UAE, and India. So there you go. I'm going to go with the basic of iPhones, the new iPhones, that is the iPhone 15. The iPhone 15 in India, the prices start at $79,900. In the US, it starts at $66,208. In the UK, it's $80,770, and in the UAE, it's $76,687. Bear in mind, all these are prices. For the rest of the countries, it's just direct conversion of the prices that were announced for the US. If you take US dollar and you take current prices, this is what you will get. As far as India is concerned, this is the official price that's been announced. And if you see, India is still the most expensive, barely, a few little percentage down as compared to UK for the basic iPhone 15 models. And this iPhone 15, Shweta, is the one that is made in India. And I'm saying this because the basic iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Plus get made in India, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro models, they don't get made in India. All Pro models are only assembled in India. Every single component is imported. And if you see the Pro models price difference, India $159,900 is where it begins. US $99,354, UK $124,206, and UAE $115,043. The difference is more stark over here, Shweta, because this phone is completely imported. And the price difference is, hold your breath, nearly 50%. Indian iPhone 15 Pro models are nearly 50% more expensive than you find it in US, UK, and UAE. As far as the basic iPhone 15 models is concerned, price difference is around 20% over here, from the cheapest to what it costs in India. And the fundamental difference is iPhone 15 gets made out of India, the Pro models, don't get made out of India. Here at this stage, let me give you another kicker. The iPhone 15 Pro models, they don't get made in India. The Pro models 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 don't get made The fact of the matter is that every single time Apple launches a new iPhone, for the year in which the new iPhone is launched, the majority of the shipments belong to previous iPhone models. For example, last year when iPhone 14 was launched, more than 50% of shipments of Apple for last year were not iPhone 14s, but the previous models. And in the previous year before that, for iPhone 13, the year iPhone 13 was launched, just about 20% of iPhone 13s were shipped. Nearly 70% of shipments from Apple were for models previous to iPhone 13. So the fact of the matter is that Apple is not going to cut prices unless otherwise there's a genuine cause for it. They're going to invest more in marketing and promotion. And there is a huge market for previous iPhone models. Even as we celebrate with euphoria about the great launch of iPhone 15s, this year too, Shweta, the majority of shipments from Apple to India will be in the form of previous iPhone models. Is a huge market over here, and the prices being high, another reason being given is that US and UAE are, in terms of volumes, are bigger markets. So the price of a single iPhone tends to come down. Whereas if you see in India, the volumes are not as great as the markets in US or UAE or UK. Hence, the price of a single iPhone tends to be much higher, Shweta.
All right, and price difference that you can see on your screen, whopping 50% price difference as far as iPhone 15 Pro Max is concerned. 99,300 something in the US. In India, it's costing a bomb at 1,60,000
And
rupees.
also the fundamental difference is that in every other market, the phones are sold with plans. And the system is very different. Here in India, you just go to a mobile phone shop, you buy a phone, and then you figure out which carrier you want or don't want. So then the costs, work out differently there. They also have a habit of returning iPhones. So the new cost of the new iPhone doesn't seem like, somebody's just come and robbed you.
Right.
So it works a little differently in other markets. But the fact of the matter is that in India, we were hoping for a price cut, and that hasn't happened. And even as you talk about the iPhone 15 Pro Max, Shweta, the 15, for example, there is no price cut. It's the same price as in which iPhone 14 was launched. It's not a premium as far as to iPhone 14, iPhone 30 are concerned. Whereas the Pro models are concerned, even in the US, there has been a price increase of $100 per iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max. $100 price increase in the US already, which is obviously translating into a greater price difference as far as the Indian market is concerned.
Absolutely, and a far greater price difference at that, about 60,000 rupees as far as 15, the Pro Max model is concerned. We'll get you all the updates here as far as Apple and the brand new launches, including the Apple Watch, right here on Newsline. But moving to another coveted item, perhaps, an item of great price and significance would be a Tesla car. Now, we know that Tesla car will come to India eventually at some point, whether it's going to be 25 lakh or 45 lakh or 30 lakh. I mean, all of that in the realm of speculation. But one thing is for sure, Tesla is betting big on India to the point that it's going to double up sourcing of its components from India to make Tesla EVs in the US. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says, and that's an important bite, he says that Tesla has already bought EV parts or EV component parts worth $1 billion in the last year. It's going to double that up to $1.9 billion. Good news there, as far as Indian manufacturers of local parts, local components is concerned. So if an ecosystem is set up far in advance, it will be easier for Tesla to set up base in India.
Absolutely, and here the headline and the messaging of this entire story is that clause called India sourcing. Which we always speak in negative terms when it comes to IKEA or anywhere. How can they source from India when there's no enough quality available? And then when they source it, the products are not going to be good, and they need to source it from outside, and the products are going to be more expensive. So India sourcing is a very contentious clause as far as foreign players manufacturing in India is concerned. And as far as that particular issue is concerned, this piece of news is a great relief that a company like Tesla, run by a guy like Elon Musk, not known for following rules all the time, or not known for playing by the book all the time, is doubling up in terms of playing by the book as far as sourcing is concerned and India is concerned.
Right.
So that's why I think that Elon Musk chosen to play by the rules that India has laid down for manufacturing in India, and in fact being proactive about it. Like you're saying, they're already procured so much already, and they are planning to double their procurement so far. there cannot be a better advertisement for India sourcing.
And you know, it basically, what does it do? If you come to think of it, the local supply chain will already be in place by the time they start either manufacturing or assembling. Assembling, maybe not, because another important statement that came in from Commerce Minister was that we will not be giving any preferential treatment to Tesla, which they have stated again and again, that we will not give any preferential treatment. So import duty will stay intact, which essentially means that if you want to sell to Indians, you've got to make in India, Amit.
Yeah, so it's the ecosystem is being set up before he starts manufacturing, like you said. So it's a good boost for other players to come in, because it's a boost for the reputation of Indian makers, like Krishna mentioned, that we were accused of making back lower quality products. Somebody like Elon Musk, who's an eccentric, especially even on quality, and if he likes Indian products and he's increasing purchases, then that's a boost for other players to look at India in a more serious manner.
All right, and perhaps India would be looked at now as a manufacturing hub, manufacturing facility.
No, more than Shweta, there is no
roadblocks. EVs, because that is the big expectation.
There is no more issues. Like the bigger question we're asking, EVs require advanced technology, cutting edge technology, latest equipment, latest components, all new things. And if we can make all that, all the elements of that ecosystem right here in India, and if there's a voice of support coming in from the likes of Elon Musk, then the future of India as a electronics manufacturing hub, specifically speaking, and overall a general manufacturing hub is bright.
And auto manufacturing hub, and EVs is the, I think it's the game of today, it's the game of tomorrow, and Tesla, they're betting big on India as far as its EV manufacturing is concerned. Hopefully we'll set shop very, very quickly. The ball is now rolling, and it's already started rolling since last year. Tesla procuring 1 billion worth of EV components part from India, likely to double that up this year. But moving to another big conglomerate that is in news is Google.
Yes.
Google is facing an antitrust trial in the US. There is a trust deficit. What is Google accused of?
Shweta, both of us, we keep discussing how many antitrust trials that Google is going to face.
And where all?
Because it is already under the eye of the storm, in the eye of the storm. In Europe, European Union already has 2 cases against it for breaching trust regulations. And mainly in this particular case, they are being accused of monopolizing the search engine market, specifically speaking, to the point where 70 to 80%, more than 80% of the search market is being monopolized by Google through both in terms of transferring money and in terms of coercion. Imagine if you're going to be talking about $4 to $7 billion worth of payouts from Google to Apple. And forcing Apple to make sure on its Safari browser you get only default Google search. How is it possible that in Safari there's no other search but you exactly Google? And that's because Apple originally wanted to give users the option between Google search and Yahoo search. Google said nothing doing. If you have a browser, you'll have one search engine, and that'll be a Google search engine. And here is some cash for it as well, because you're Apple. So, but that's Apple, right? They're paying cash. But for others, other phone makers,
so you're killing competition.
You're
just dismantling them.
Exactly. You're killing as a software, dismantling competition and dismantling the possibility of competition. Nobody can even dream of coming up with a new search engine with the way the market exists right now. Every phone maker, every platform wants to make sure that they are on perfect terms with Google, so that they get Google search. And that is what this case is all about. More than 50 advocates who are fighting it out against Google at the US federal court. One of the biggest cases that Google has ever had to fight in history, breaching the trust of the public in terms of its own monopoly. More than 50 lawyers fighting against Google, but bear in mind, Google is Google. They have all the money in the world to get the greatest lawyers in the world. We really have to see how this
Absolutely.
case pans out.
I think, Krishna, if you come to think of it, for a layman out there, it's not about whether Google is going to win or lose.
Yeah.
It's about bringing a trial into motion, which actually sets precedent for other MNCs as well.
Right.
You cannot abuse power, you cannot abuse people's trust, and you cannot serve them what you like, which is what has happened in this case. I may not like Google search, but I am left with no choice.
Right. This they say in the US, the telecom giant AT&T. AT&T in the 80s grew to a point where they had a monopoly of telecom market in the US. Now this is being spoken of in the same breath as that. What happened in 1984 was that AT&T was dismantled to make sure it does not have a monopolistic control over the telecom market in the US. So Shweta, as far as the way I look at it, whenever new technology comes, new way of communicating comes, there is going to be one company or the other. Today we are talking about Google. If we had the same show 30 years ago, we'd be complaining about AT&T's monopolistic trade practices. So the question here is that what will be the outcome of the trial? Because if you're going to punish Google and take Google away from everything, you're going to take a lot of familiarity of people searching on Google search away as well. Because right now is the same argument we make. We have Ola and Uber apps. We're so dependent on Ola and Uber apps, and we keep complaining against Ola and Uber. The day Ola and Uber go away, we don't have anywhere to go. We have to buy a car immediately. So I really want to know what's going to be the outcome. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm keeping my mind open. If there are clear payments made where there's coercion, force, that's illegal, Google will have to pay up for it and pay fines and face punitive action. But my question here is that will that mean that more than 80% of search revenues that's going to Google will stop, will become lesser, will become half? Will half of our phones not have Google as the default search engine? I'm not sure.
All right, so there's very, very serious allegations that Google is faced with at this point in the US, where Department of Justice has alleged that Google paid up huge sums of money to a lot of mobile manufacturers, including Apple, to pre-install Google search engine, as a result of which it not just monopolized the market, it currently holds about 89% of the overall search engine market share in the world. What will be the outcome of this trial? We don't know, but a big, huge trial that Google and the parent company Alphabet is faced with in the US. We'll keep bringing you all those updates right here on Newsline, but with this, it's time to end the bulletin. Thank you very much for watching.
इंजीनियरिंग कर रहे हैं क्योंकि सभी लोग कर रहे हैं.
Coaching is now starting from grade 3, 4, 5, 6.
कोटा जाने वाली बीच राह में आधे टेस्ट देके हैं सिलेक्शन की चाह में.
ऑल इंडिया का बच्चा कोटा जाता है.
This rat race is for rats, not for humans. So why should we even be a part of it?
The Rat Race. This and more streaming on.
Support new permanent seats for Brazil, Germany, India and Japan.
France thus supports the candidacies of Germany, Brazil, India and Japan.
The United Arab Emirates reiterates its endorsement of India's bid for permanent membership.
India can become a permanent member of the Security Council.
We note India and Brazil in particular as key international actors and worthy candidates for permanent membership within the Council.
Getting a seat at the United Nations Security Council is like getting entry into the most exclusive geopolitical club of the world. But the biggest problem that this mid-20th century club faces is that the music being played is out of sync from the realities of 21st century world. The composition of the council in 2023 does look a lot like 1945, and India's bid to enter this VIP club is facing bottlenecks.
Please remember that India's permanent membership of an expanded, reformed United Nations Security Council is not an India-specific issue. There are many other countries there. We have a G4, there's Germany, there's Japan, I think there's Brazil and India. And so we are also trying to say regional representation. So it's not India-specific. What does the preamble to the Charter state? We the people of the United Nations. Happy birthday. You keep out 1/6 of humanity and you say, we the people of the United Nations.
Our bid for UN Security Council membership predates that of the present government, but the present government is much better positioned today than in the past to push for it. So we have sufficient support in terms of number of countries to take the plunge, because if you have 80 or 90 committed in a way because of joint statement supporters, plus the fact that India has now taken the leadership of the global south, especially during the pandemic. So in that sense, we are building up a strategy of wider support which can become 2/3 in case it goes to vote.
The United Nations Security Council comprises 15 members, and out of this, 10 are temporary, and the 5 permanent members are the United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. And here's the rules of the game, which are that all permanent members have to be on the same page for ratifying a decision or pass a resolution. And this utopian rule ensures that there's a deadlock on majority of the issues, as it is an impossible ask to have all 5 members in sync.
For example, in terms of Russia's conduct of the war in Ukraine, China threatening Taiwan, that kind of thing. And the veto power of the 5 existing members, of course, is enough to block any change in the composition of the Council, because to do that, you need a UN Charter amendment. And to approve a charter amendment, among other things, you need all 5 permanent members of the Security Council to agree. So
there is the veto, including on expansion. And also, as long as some countries in P5 are still holding back, I think we have the support of the P3 and probably Russia. But I think now the Chinese are very much blocking. So I think we need to work around a strategy where we can neutralize that.
Going back in history, India was one of the founding members of the United Nations. Even before we got our independence, we had signed the San Francisco Charter. We helped set up the United Nations. But a certain narrative suggests that we were offered a seat at the Security Council, but that offer was gift-wrapped and handed over to China.
I would be inclined to believe it was not serious. It was part of what diplomatic, diplomatic engagement with India, trying to prop up India for the purposes of the West as a democracy against authoritarianism of the Soviet Union and China. But at that time, China was the Republic of China, which was that is Taiwan today, which was a permanent member, not Communist China. So it's not a very clear affair. So I won't reach any definitive conclusions on this.
Some diffidence, if I may say so. I don't know if it was a blunder. I don't know if we were strong enough at that time to take on the responsibilities. We just emerged from a colonial experience. We were the leaders of the colonial, the post-colonial world. We went to the Bandung Conference, then there was the non-aligned movement, all that. We were leaders there. But had we been in the UN Security Council, of course, it would have been a different ballgame altogether. We would have represented the interests of everyone.
So the question that arises is that why is it important for India to be a part of this exclusive club? Apart from representing 1/6 of humanity and being the largest democracy, India needs to be on board to ensure that its huge contribution over decades to the United Nations is finally acknowledged on the world stage. And this ranges from sustainable development to strategic equilibrium, from sending out peacekeeping forces to providing financial and medical support.
I think the importance of being a permanent member of the Security Council is the opportunity it gives you to play a bigger role in, as I said, the solution of the many issues that confront us. foreign policy statecraft is not all about I should be recognized as the great power. You know, the way in which we should be seen as a great power is our ability to contribute to the solution of many of the problems which we are facing.
It will be a huge difference because then we are in the driving seat insofar as the UN Security Council is concerned. Because at the moment, decisions are taken without India participating in it. We've had, for example, at least about a year ago or a little more, China seeking to bring the Kashmir issue back into the UN Security Council for the first time after a gap of so many years. Now, if we are inside the UN Security Council, they can't do it. Once we are in, then we can control the inclination or the policies of the 5 permanent members to control global affairs by extending the remit of the UN Security Council.
I invited the Indian government not only to play a part in the March first UN Water Conference since 1977, but to be one of the leading players. India can become a permanent member of the Security Council.
India undoubtedly has support from various influential quarters in its bid for a seat in the UNSC. The Security Council structure requires a dramatic makeover, and the current members are opposed to any new country gaining a foothold. And in these circumstances, there's a very fine line difference between being eager and being desperate. India needs to be careful in maintaining the optics, even as the back channels are working proactively.
We are playing the role of a confident India which seeks to play a positive and constructive global role in the context of waging peace. So we'll play that whether we are in the Security Council or not. Meanwhile, the Security Council is making itself irrelevant. That's the thing.
Well, I think one of the UN's problems is it's so big that it tries to encompass everything. I think many of the specialized agencies still perform important work. I think it's the political bodies of the UN whose dysfunction has made them pretty close to irrelevant, the Security Council being at the top of the list. Among other things, you need all 5 permanent members of the Security Council to agree. So India's biggest problem, of course, is China, because China would veto a change in the charter that would give India a permanent seat. I think that's very clear.
Let them exercise their veto. First, let it be approved by the General Assembly, and then let it go to the Security Council. Let them stand exposed before the rest of the world. And for loss of face for them is a very big thing. Not that the tingling fellow who's there, he cares. And, sir, if you put up your right hand, you probably count 1 thumb and 4 fingers. Just the 4 fingers. He has lesser friends than 4 in the world. And I have 193 members of the United Nations.